Hello YouTube, welcome back to Coding with Glen, and in this tutorial we're going to close up the functions. I know in the last module we talked about functions, but that was just in a glimpse manner. So in this tutorial we're just going to get deeper and finish off with these functions and talk about the arguments. I know we didn't talk about them in the last tutorial, so that's what we're going to be talking about in this tutorial. So the first thing you need to know is the keyword parameter here, not a keyword necessarily, but a few notes there, and argument here. So what it means here, a parameter is just like the types that you're going to be passing into a function, whereas the argument is here is the actual values that we are passing into the function, whenever we call it. So that's just more of it. And so let's get deep into the code and dive into the code and do the practical means of it. So what you need to know is let's declare a function. Of course, the def keyword is used to declare a function. So we're gonna call this one calculate. So our function calculates here, receives no argument. So if you have no argument at all, you just leave the parentheses open like this with no value. So what we're going to be doing here, we're expecting to return a value here. We're going to be doing a return statement plus 18, and then we're going to say return a. So a return statement is simply a return of an address, like get this value, this variable. So if you does not know a variable, it's more like a memory allocation in the computer memory. That way we can find a value. So here it's going to return the address of a, and then of course we'll get the total that is being calculated here, of course. And if we should print this, since it's a returning function, we should always make sure we assign it the result of it to a variable that holds the type that is being returned. In this case, we're returning an integer. So we would do something like, all right, let's just do that. We'll do like total that we're receiving is equals to calculate it. And as we go on and say total here, we should be able to see the result of that. And if we print here, look at that, so we're getting 25. So there comes a time when we want to actually receive passing values to the function. That's when we have to populate these parentheses with some parameters we'll be expecting. So in our case, maybe we're expecting a b here and a c here. So that means that whenever a function is called, we should be able to pass in two arguments so that the function can do some calculate. And in our case here, we're going to be having to remove the 12 here and say b plus c, since we're now receiving these values dynamically. And so here we're going to be saying 12 here, and then a comma to separate the arguments. And if we call again this function, it should be able to give us the same value. And as you can see, it didn't change. It outputs again 25. So what is happening is here, when we call this function, it's going to pass in 12 and represent that with b here, 13 represent that with c, and when we do our arithmetic operation, it's going to assign that into a, and then we return our a value, that is 25. So there comes a moment in time when we want to pass more value. We actually, at some point in time, we do not know how many values are going to be passing to that function. Maybe we're going to leave it to the user so that he can dynamically enter any amount of numbers they need to calculate. That's where the variable length parameter comes in. So the variable length parameter, what it does is when you look and mode it in other languages, maybe Java, that is used to hold like an array, a sequence of characters, but not necessarily giving in the actual length of it, but the length is going to be there put dynamically as the array grows. So here, how you do it in Python, you're just going to have to put a star here, and that's it. That's your variable length parameter. That's how simple it is in Python. So if we run this, it's going to run and print out an error here and say unsupported operand types for plus, int, and tuple. That is because this is now more of like a tuple. So our variable length in Python is recognized as a tuple here. So the addition won't do here, won't work out. So the nice thing that you would want to do here is to do something like for v for the value in C here, because this is now recognized as a tuple. So we need to loop around the values that are in C. And what we're going to do after that, after we find that, we're just going to bring here this line here. So what we're going to be doing here, we're going to be saying now B plus V, every variable we're going to be looping through in C. So when we run this, it shouldn't give us an error, but we get 25. And of course, someone say, what is the difference? Now here comes the power of the variable length. If we set more values here than specified even on that one, it should work. Now you see we are having more arguments here, more parameters that are passing in here, but as you can see, there are just two variables here, but this star is representing the variable length. That's when it comes handy. Now you see we can do this simply rather than adding more and more parameters here so that we can input the values. We're just going to do the variable length thing, and if we run this, it should calculate the total of everything that is in there. And now I know for surety you're only seeing this error like what, it's not outputting the right value. And what is happening, we're only getting 46 here, but these are quite many. And what is happening here is it's only reading to a specific length, but what you may need to do is take these two. So let's debug our code here. We're going to be doing some debugging a little bit and see what is happening here. Let's just use simple values so that we can go on together perfectly. So here we should be expecting something like a 9 here. So if we run this, it's giving us 6, and you're wondering why is it giving us a 6. So the error here is when we get this value, what it's going to do is it's going to be inputting that in B, and after inputting 2 in B, every time the function is called, the loop goes around, we're going to be using that same 2 continuously. So it's not going to be calculating in a perfect manner. So what we need to be doing is, rather than saying B here, we're going to be saying plus equals, and now what we should get here, that's going to be B here, and what we should be getting here is the correct value rather than the value we've been receiving, because in the latter end what it's been doing is we've been continuously plugging in these 2 in B, whatever we were doing the calculation in our last implementation, like that's why we're getting the wrong values here. So now when we run this code, we should be able to see a 9 here, and hola, 9 is there. So you should be careful when you use these variable range parameters and know what you're doing. And as you can see, you need to be careful, because now instead of doing the calculation like we did in the last time, let me just undo that so we can see our error. Instead of doing something like this, that would return the wrong value, because every time this function is invoked, we're going to be using the same B2 over and over, and then nothing is changing here, and we're just going to be adding the value of the variable length parameter into it, but the B doesn't change whenever we do a loop. So you're going to be careful enough to use that B we are passing here plus equal, and remember arithmetic operators that plus equal E is the same as saying B equals B plus V. So that should do the same thing at A. So if we run it again, we should always see 9. Oh, it's saying A is not defined. Sorry, I forgot to change that. And if we run our code, we should see the same 9. And thank you. Now you know the fundamentals and the concept that wrap around the functions, and I think you're ready to go on to the next level. And thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next lecture, and you should always remember, check your code, try everything you can. If it fails like it did here, you should always find a solution to it, and that's how you grow. I'll see you in the next lecture, and thank you for tuning in.